Welcome to the Ethics and Morality Hour. Let me get this other camera set up just in case I want to use it. Probably should have done this before the stream, but it wouldn't be one of my streams if I didn't have to do something after I already start the stream, right? Well, welcome to the viewers we have already. Appreciate you showing up. And just move that to right there, and then we can zoom in. Hypothetically speaking, I messed it up. There we go. Let's use that one instead of the other one. A little bit better. A little bit more intimate, huh? Hello, just saying. What are you just saying today? Just hello? So, today's Ethics and Morality Hour, which it may not just be an hour. It's more of a free-flowing Ethics and Morality Hour. Maybe less. But there's some craziness going on in the world today. And not just today, but every day. About to go to work. Wow, stay safe, my friend. On your way to work. But what I want to address is that basically the fundamentals and foundational beliefs that hold societies together are quite literally under attack. And I'm not sure that people realize the scope of this or the types of people who are involved in it. You know, what positions of power they may hold. Hello, Lady Vixen. And so my hope is that the audience here on FlyFoxPro, who is so very intellectual on the FlyFoxPro channel, is so very intellectual and smart and capable that we can have this conversation and really get to a place of understanding about all of this. I put 2 videos up on Upon the Chaos today that I think are I think all of the ones I put up today are very important. Put up 3 videos total. I think all of them are very important. And they're all relevant to this topic. But I think it warrants a deeper conversation than you can have in a video that you're trying to get the average person to watch. And that is kind of the point of Upon the Chaos. Part of the reason why I switched from just having the one channel to having multiple channels is that in order to reach more people, you kind of have to simplify things down a little bit. And if I were to just go on Upon the Chaos and speak to an audience that is used to the simplified version of something, they may not actually respond to that. But I know you guys are all about those deeper conversations, or at least hearing me ramble about them. So that's why I've decided to do it on an Ethics and Morality Hour rather than just make some short video. Plus, I enjoy the interaction, if there is any. So what kind of videos did I put up today on that channel, Upon the Chaos? Well, the first one I put up was about the media and their framing of the narrative, for a modern term, their framing of the narrative to manipulate people to thinking something that isn't true. If you watched that video, or possibly saw it somewhere else, there was a press conference with the chief of police of Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, and he called the events in that area, I think rightly so, he called them a riot. And this did not go over well with the people who made up the media in the room. They said it wasn't a riot. Well, here is someone who's qualified to make that assessment, who was there getting pelted with bricks and frozen cans of soda, which, if you think, well, how could that possibly hurt? Well, freeze a can of soda and then allow someone to throw it at you and see if it hurts. 2 law enforcement officers were injured during this riot, and the media wanted, oh, it's not a riot. It's not a riot. The second video I did was about, which I don't think is going to get as much traction or views as the others, was a 27 minute, I think, video about taking your time and really understanding the facts of something before you make statements. At least do a little bit of reading and research. And then the third video was about Rashida Tlaib, who is a congresswoman from Michigan, who said that she didn't believe that there should be no policing and no incarceration. None. And then another thing that happened is that the city manager of Brooklyn Center, which is in Minnesota, if you don't know, Kurt Bogany, I think it could be Bogany, it could be Bogany, I don't know. Spelled Boganey. He was fired on Monday, just hours after he suggested that the police officer who fatally shot Dante Wright in Minneapolis should receive due process before being fired. Think about that. No investigation. No investigation was needed. None of the systems that are set up to deal with these things internally inside of a police force and externally, none of those were allowed. And not only was it expected that officer would be fired, but the city manager merely suggesting that there ought to be an investigation and a process, due process, by which these things are determined, got him fired. The city council voted to fire him. After the city council voted to fire him, council member Chris Lawrence Anderson admitted that Bogany was doing a great job, but she feared that the violent mob would personally attack her if she didn't vote to fire him. He was doing a great job. I respect him dearly, she said. I didn't want repercussions at a personal level. An elected official, a city council member, feared for her own personal safety so much that she fired someone she thought was doing a good job, a great job in her own words, because she thought she might be physically harmed or have other repercussions on a personal level. That is a fundamental, all of these things together, a fundamental attack on the foundations of society. A society can only function as long as there are certain institutions that people have confidence in, and the majority of people believe in and support. Otherwise, you have anarchy. you devolve into some sort of anarchy where everyone is their own agent of force. One of the things I've wanted to talk about, I think I've mentioned before, is that law is dependent upon force. There is a threat of force behind every law. Do this or else. I think we've talked about this before. Do this or else. That's the threat behind a law, regardless of which law. Taxation is the threat is give us the tax money or else you will be forced to, or we will throw you into jail, right? There's a threat of force behind it. And when you descend into anarchy, every person becomes that agent of force. When there are no police, when there is no criminal justice system, when there is no system of laws by which people will allow themselves to be governed, it will descend into absolute anarchy. And the hypocrisy of Rashida Tlaib is that she says that this institution is completely flawed. This system of laws, of incarceration, and of policing is so flawed that it ought to be completely abolished, just done away with. While she will go the next Congress and vote on laws that have the implication of force behind them. She will vote on bills to become laws, trying to pass legislation with the threat of violence. If you do not follow this, we will physically apprehend you and put you in jail. If she votes on gun laws, that's the threat of violence. She is a complete and total hypocrite. While she lives her life surrounded by security, surrounded by people with guns, law enforcement officers, federal agents, whose duty is to protect her at her job, she will not even allow the possibility of there being law enforcement or policing for the average citizen. It ought to completely be abolished. Well, let's read her actual words here so that we can quote her verbatim. This is what she said. It wasn't an accident, referring to the events of Brooklyn Center. Policing in our country is inherently and intentionally racist. Dante Wright was met with aggression and violence. I am done with those who condone government-funded murder. No more policing, incarceration, and militarization. It can't be reformed. How does she expect to enforce the laws that she's passing or promoting in Congress? I ask you. If there is no law enforcement, if there is no threat behind it, what value do her laws that she's advocating have if I can just ignore them and face no repercussions from them? She is a bad faith actress. She does not believe this. I am confident that she is just evil and manipulative because there's no way that she is this stupid that she doesn't see the inconsistency here. She knows that the laws that she is advocating for require policing to enforce. They require people who will do investigations and charge people with violating these federal laws that she's advocating for. Or she is the most stupid person in Congress. It's so utterly and completely ridiculous, this idea that one has to come to the conclusion that she is just a lying, manipulative, evil person. Or that she is absolutely, utterly, stupidly ignorant. Stupidly ignorant. I don't like how I said that. Probably sounded weird. Pretty nasally. Who knows? The point is, Rashida Tlaib is attacking the very foundations of society. If there is no criminal justice system, and you want to, and you say no more policing, no more incarceration, no more militarization, what are you advocating in its place? She provides no substitute. And the thing is that the Antifa rioters, the Black Lives Matter organizers, founders, they fundamentally believe that these systems ought to be abolished. But they have nothing to put in its place. They're advocating for it to be abolished right now with nothing to replace it. So let's grant them, which I do not believe this. My word. Stupid phone call. Mute that. I do not believe this, but I will grant it to them for the sake of the argument. I don't believe that the system is inherently racist and, how did she put, inherently and intentionally racist and beyond some sort of reformation. And I believe there are issues that could be improved, by the way. I don't believe that, but let's grant it for a second. What you are advocating for is that it be completely abolished right now, today, this very minute, and replaced with nothing. Imagine the chaos that would ensue. Defund the police. Everybody's fired. There is no money. There are no police. There is no arrests. There's no one to arrest anybody. It's the purge, basically. You know? Just nobody's going to do anything. Go this day and do what thou wilt. Right? Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Just do whatever you want. And there's no ramifications for anything. And what will happen? Well, people want to protect their property. People want to protect their property, whether it's their business or their home. They want to protect their life, their liberty. And it will be chaos and violence. She doesn't believe this. She doesn't actually want this. If she does, then my word, she is really, really evil. It's hard to talk about this because this is such an outrageous idea. It's my belief that she says these things to gain attention, which, I mean, it's working. But at some point you have to talk about this insanity. This is not just some random person on the internet. This isn't some random person on Twitter. Right? This is a current member of Congress who is advocating for the most radical position that any American politician may have ever advocated, at least at a federal level. It's absolutely insane. It's total insanity. Even her fellow Democrats, like Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia, said, distancing himself in comments to Fox News, he said, "We definitely need reforms in the space of qualified immunity, but I am not in the camp that says, we should just disrespect police, we should reform police, or police are necessary." So he believes that qualified immunity, basically that cops have certain immunities to prosecution, which that is not what qualified immunity is about. Lawsuits. Qualified immunity is about lawsuits against cops. Basically, you can sue the government for this, but you can't personally bring a lawsuit against the individual police officer. It's not about the exceptions to laws or justifications for deadly use of force. That's a totally separate thing. Roscoe says, if the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? The same thing that the righteous always ought to do, which is to speak the truth and run for political office. Or support those who are advocating for what is righteous. The thing to recognize about Scripture is that Paul was this is a very important, and this is in the Bible for a reason. God put this in the Bible for a reason. Paul was a citizen of Rome. Now, back then, not everyone was a citizen. Just because you lived in a Roman province or in Rome itself does not make you a citizen. There's a separate class of citizens. Paul, the Apostle Paul, was a citizen of Rome. He had certain rights that the rest of the populace did not have. Sorry, my eye is itching. Right. Roscoe says, if the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? And having done all, to stand. Paul relied upon those rights. He appealed to his rights as a citizen, utilizing the governmental system Sorry about that. I don't know why I did that. No, because some scammers calling me. Thanks, Indian scam centers. Stand therefore, right? You have to stand up. You cannot be silent. You cannot allow this to pass. The reason that we have independence in this country from the tyrannical system that was being imposed upon us by the British is because people refused tyranny. They refused tyranny. They refused to allow tyrannical and evil leaders to impose their tyrannical will on the people. Being silent about an issue this important, I think, is a moral evil. Thank you, Roscoe, for joining me, and I do hope you watch some, but who knows how long this will go. It might be some good stuff. Who knows? If you haven't, I think you have, but if you haven't subscribed or watched the video, I know you've subscribed. If you haven't watched the videos from today on Upon the Chaos, they are, I think, okay, pretty good. I think it's a morally evil position to remain silent on something this serious. This sitting congresswoman, someone currently one of the leaders of this country, particularly of the state of Michigan, is advocating for anarchy. Hypocritically, while she sits in an office with security, with protection, and would expect the police to come if she was attacked outside of that immediate security. The people who will be the most hurt by the ending of police are the poor, then the people who live in high crime areas, which tend to be minorities. This woman hates you. Her policies are such that she is advocating for your possible death, for theft to be committed against you, for crimes to be committed against you, assault, rape, who knows? And there to be no ramifications for it. She's not offering any solution. She says no more policing, incarceration, and militarization. It can't be reformed. Then what is the alternative? What is the alternative to law enforcement? Let's take that word policing out of there. What she's saying is there can be no more law enforcement. There can be no civil society that does not enforce its laws, that have laws that they enforce. The whole point of government is that a society is formed around people who voluntarily cede or give up some of their rights so that they can live together in a community. To remove the ability and capacity to enforce your laws, to have a criminal justice system of any kind, because she's not offering a solution to this, you effectively make the government totally worthless. And you establish anarchy. Each person, thus, being in the position of might makes right. I am stronger than you, therefore, I can commit violence against you and get away with it. Then who becomes the most powerful are the most evil people, the most ruthless people. How can someone look at the world today? How can they look at the world today and think people are morally good? People are deep, good people down deep inside. We don't even need police because people are so good. I watched a video it was from a few years ago, of a mother killed in a drive-by shooting. As a bystander, as she was standing near some other people. And she died shielding the child that she was holding in her arms. Little child, her daughter, in her arms. She died shielding that child from those murderers. And you want no policing. You want no chance for justice for this woman. True justice. None. That's Rashida Tlaib's position. She doesn't want those people to be arrested. No more incarceration. No more punishment. Those people are free to go because might makes right. How else can you, what other conclusion can you come to other than that Rashida Tlaib is evil or absolutely insane? Insanely stupid. Just saying, in the comment says, these clowns are full of it. They just ride the bandwagon and wait for the next popular thing to come along. And they are so either completely devoid of morals that they're willing to say something that they don't believe so that they can continue to have clout and power, or they are evil. And they want anarchy. Or they're just so incompetently stupid that they don't understand what they're saying. And all of those things are bad in their own ways. If someone lies to you, someone tells you something that isn't true, there's only so many options. They're ignorant, or they know they're lying and they're acting in an evil manner. Or and that evil manner can take different forms. Hypocrisy, or a malevolent attitude, wanting to see suffering. Which one is it with her? At some point, you have to ask yourself, when a person says something so radical, so radically opposed to humanity as this, is there no system in place to remove this woman from Congress? I don't want violence to be done against her. Just the opposite. Just the opposite. I want her to live a very peaceful life away from any institution of power. As far away as possible. This is advocating for anarchy. People of Michigan, recall this woman. Get her out of office. Get a good candidate in there. Somebody who's a Democrat who believes that in insanity. Primary this person. She should be near nothing of power. No place of power, no control over anybody. That is how utterly and ridiculously insane this statement is. Jimmy from Gabe's Movies and Comics R Us says, hello, my name is... Oh, I'm not... You're funny, Jimmy. It's not relevant. I mean, at least Tim Kaine recognized, Democrat from Virginia, Senator from Virginia, Democrat, said, no, I don't agree with that. I mean, at least a Democrat that believes that you should not have anarchy. This woman, this congresswoman, I think has disqualified herself from holding political office. You know, we Al Franken resigned over taking photos of a sleeping person where he pretended but didn't actually grope their breasts. This person is advocating for anarchy. Insane. Not just some other political system, but the absolute terror of anarchy on people in her constituency and all over the country. Thank you, Jimmy, for keeping it light. Just saying's right. Yeah, that was pretty funny that Jimmy posted that. He's keeping it light, keeping it, you know, a little bit of levity to lighten the mood. Well, what do you guys think about this? Because this is absolute insanity to me. I can understand that the media is evil and corrupt and they want to manipulate the story so that you don't know the truth. But when a sitting congresswoman quite literally advocates for anarchy, I just don't know what to do. Other than urge anybody, if you live in Michigan, to start organizing protests against this person. Start seeing what you can do to remove this person from political office. It's funny, Jimmy. It was funny. I enjoy it. Enjoy your your comment there. As I was getting a little worked up. I almost cried about talking about that woman who protected her child from a drive-by shooting. Um, I don't know if she is Muslim or not. There's the what do they call it, the crew or something like that, AOC, and then there's the woman from Minnesota who wears the hijab. I can't remember her name. Let's see. Well, yeah, this is yeah, she is. She is some sort of a Muslim. Yeah. I wanted to make sure I checked, right? Because there is a large Muslim population. I say large in respect to the amount of people that are actually there in Michigan, so it's not surprising. But she's the one that's banned from entering Israel. her and Ilhan Omar, I think, are both banned from entering Israel. It's the most, honestly, I think she might be the most, that might be the most radical thing that an American federal politician, someone elected to federal office, has ever said. And consider what that means. There are people who, as elected members of the federal government, advocated for American chattel slavery. And I think it's more radically evil than that. Now, oh, you're racist. Well, no, because those people still advocated for government, a government which got rid of slavery and abolished it in this country. They still advocated for the process by which to do that. Now, were they in the wrong? Sure, yeah. Yeah, not even sure. Yes, absolutely they were wrong. But that's how radical this is, to dismantle the government in that way that she is advocating for is absolutely insane. Just Saying says, I would say don't worry about it, but nowadays just likely to happen than not. He also says, is she the one that married her brother or something? That is allegedly Ilhan Omar that did that, from Minnesota. Considering how they behave on Twitter, it isn't shocking that they got banned. Yeah. I mean, when you're advocating for a country to basically not exist, it's not surprising that country doesn't want you to come there. I don't even know what to say. At some point, these things just become so ridiculous that you just have to laugh. Or cry. What can you do? I mean, you can't just take these things lightly. This is not just some random person sounding off on Twitter saying something stupid. Like I said, it's a sitting congresswoman. It's a congresswoman currently elected to Congress that has a say in our laws. And she is willing to advocate for anarchy for the average citizen. If she can't be beaten by a Republican in her district, then somebody has to primary her. I don't even know what to say anymore. I just know that it's important to speak up about these things. All right, we've got about 20 minutes and it will be an hour. And since this is the ethics and morality hour, we could end because I'm kind of tuckered out after all that. After that degree of rantology, it seems to me that I only have so many rants in me unless people help me out and get me going. I suppose I could look at the rest of the news. Or we could talk about these foundational issues of ethics and morality, I suppose. So it is the ethics and morality hour. Like I've said today and times before, behind law, there's a thread of force. Do this or else. Now, in a civil society, I don't want to say polite society because that's not what I mean. A civil society, the best course of action if you believe a law to be unjust in a civil society, non-tyrannical society, is to follow the law and advocate for its abolishment. Advocate for some alternative. It's not to riot and loot stores and burn down buildings and just assume everything's going to be fine. People seem to think that these businesses just have riot insurance, that that's going to protect them from damages and that the insurance is just going to make up for everything. That is usually not the case. That is one of the reasons why that is precluded in an insurance agreement, said this does not cover riots. So these places that are looted, especially if they're a smaller business, if their business is burned down and torched, they cannot come back from it. And even then, even if they do get insurance money, it's not going to be possibly enough to actually rebuild, to come back with their actual business. You've just lost people's jobs, livelihoods. You've destroyed because you have been fed a pack of lies, force-fed lies from a media that is purposely manipulating you for their own monetary gain and political gain. Former President Barack Obama called to reimagine policing after the death of 20-year-old Dante Wright. Our hearts are heavy over yet another shooting of a black man, Dante Wright, at the hands of police. Former President Barack Obama, where were you? Where were you when a person from the state that you used to represent as a senator, that you pledged to support, protect as a senator, was shot and killed while protecting her child by a drive-by shooting? Where was your outrage over that? Where was your outrage over the death of Brittany Hill? When, while holding her 1-year-old daughter, a car drove up and shot her. Not the car, the people inside the car. Shot her with a gun and killed her. Where was your outrage then, Barack Obama? Where was your advocacy for a system which abolishes that? Far more people who have black skin are dying from that kind of violence than at the hands of police. Where's your outrage over that? Where's your answers? Where's your solutions for that? You seem to be mad or think that it merits change when men who are in the act of resisting arrest die at the hands of police. But you don't think it's a big deal, seemingly, when a woman who is merely standing outside holding her 1-year-old daughter in her arms is murdered. Where's your outrage about that? Why is one death more important than the other? I believe that there are real changes that could be brought to law enforcement to get rid of these things, to make them less. But they're so small. There's such a statistical minority that even right now, they're a fraction of a percent of all the interactions that happen between law enforcement and the citizens of the United States, or foreign nationals that are here and deal with cops as well. But I believe that there are changes that could improve law enforcement. Obama continues, he says in a statement, the fact that this could happen even as the city of Minneapolis is going through the trial of Derek Chauvin and reliving the heart-wrenching murder of George Floyd. Murder! This is a lawyer who is making a judgment about the outcome of a case, possibly tainting the judicial process that is happening by his comments. The President of the United States, former President of the United States, by making a judicial judgment, in his words, in this statement. His words carry weight, but he is willing to taint this case for his political expediency because he doesn't care about the institutions of this country or of civil society. How else can you interpret this action? He said, Michelle and I grieve beside the Wright family for their loss. Where was the grieving for Brittany Hill, Obama? Did you ever speak out once about her death? Where's the grieving with her family? Chicago is one of the most dangerous places in the entire country, full of crime and murder. That's where he's from. That's the state that he represented in the Senate. What did he do for the people of Illinois? Other than make it more dangerous to live there. He says, we empathize with the pain that Black mothers, fathers, and children are feeling after yet another senseless tragedy. A tragedy brought on by somebody trying to escape a lawful arrest. somebody trying to flee the justice system that these Democrats put in place in Minnesota. The Democrats put in place a system where this person was charged with a gun crime. And then their law enforcement officers, because that law that they instituted has the threat of force, and they expected it to be enforced. When that man was then charged with that crime, and law enforcement officers were there to enforce the laws that these very same types of people, Democrats, leftists, had instituted in that state, he tried to escape it and unfortunately was shot. Presumably, based on what the video looks like, in my opinion, mistakenly, as the person was intending to shoot him with a taser. He says, and we will continue to work with all fair-minded Americans like Rashida Tlaib, who advocated for the abolishment of policing and incarceration. Is that a fair-minded American, Barack Obama? He says, all fair-minded Americans to confront historical inequities and bring about nationwide changes that are so long overdue. Absolute insanity. They advocated for a law. They wanted this type of law that criminalized this man's possession of a gun. And then when their law was enforced, when that threat of force came to bear upon this man, and he died, now they're outraged. Now they're outraged. Now Barack Obama thinks it's important to possibly taint a jury pool by his words that will carry weight and will be reported. The foundations of society are being attacked, not just in the United States, but in Canada as well, where the government of Canada is perpetrating absolutely ridiculous amounts of religious persecution against its people in Alberta. Not allowing people to gather together to worship God. The foundations of civil society, of Western society, the rights afforded to people by God include the right to worship Him, the freedom of speech and expression. Big attack in Canada. P. Bunny asks, so they want to abolish police, so who replaces them? BLM? There is no plan. They're talking immediate abolition of these things. No more policing, no more incarceration. What's the solution? They don't have one. They don't have one. There is none. What system are you going to put in its place? Laws, by their very existence, have the threat of force behind them. Follow this law or else we will force you up until your death. That's the threat of force against you. If you do not comply, we will make you comply. That is what a law is stating. Now you may think, come now. All laws are that type of force? Yeah. An anti-littering law says, if you litter, we will force you to pay a fine. There's a threat of force there. And in most states, it may be all, I'm not an expert on the matter, there are provisions by which the government has the justification to kill you if you are attempting to flee while they are arresting you for a felony or committing a felony, right? What system are you going to put in place to make sure people comply? To have any kind of law enforcement. And I'm not just talking about the current system of law enforcement. How do you enforce laws without wielding the sword? I'm looking up a biblical passage here, not just looking down and not saying anything. I'm bringing up Romans chapter 13. Without a criminal justice system, you cannot enforce these laws. And what it means is a fundamental reshaping of the entirety of this country, which I guarantee you will not be put up with by people who live in states who are not dominated by these lunatics. Romans chapter 13. Let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authorities resists what God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgments. For rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. Would you have no fear of the one who is in authority? Then do what is good, and you will receive his approval. For he is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain. For he is a servant of God, an avenger who carries out God's wrath on the wrongdoer. Therefore, one must be in subjection, not only to avoid God's wrath, but also for the sake of conscience. God commands people to be subject to the governing authorities, to just laws, because the government wields the sword of justice as instituted by God. When a government carries out a just law, that authority is not derived from the government. That authority is derived from God himself. God gives them authority to wield the sword. That's what the scripture says. For he is God's servant for your good, but if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain. For he is the servant of God, an avenger who carries out God's wrath on the wrongdoer. When a person is justly punished, God's wrath is carried out on them. That's what the scripture says. Oh, P-Money says a lot of money being spent in Alberta to build a fence and have guards to stop people from worshiping. Tyrannical, one might describe that. Tyranny. Just Saying says, I read somewhere this week that some cities proposed park rangers over police. P-Money says, just saying, will park rangers be allowed to carry guns and tasers? See, do they not, park ranger, are we talking about usually a state-run law enforcement agency who hold the same qualifications and go through the same training as the law enforcement officers in the entirety of those states? Who carry guns and enforce laws? Who enforce the statutes of those states? People are so ignorant, they don't know what they're talking about. Now, whether I do not believe that the crime that this guy, he had multiple warrants, but one of them I believe was a weapon possession violation. Let's see if we can find what those were. Oh, let's see if I can find it. I'm hoping to find. Let me find it here. If this is accurate, this is from the Daily Mail, which is a UK-based thing. I don't know the accuracy of this, but we'll take a look at it. Dante Wright had a warrant out for his arrest for attempted aggravated robbery charges after choking and holding a woman at gunpoint in 2019. That I cannot advocate for. If it was just merely a concealed carry violation or something in a state that has some sort of law against concealed carry, I would say that is an unjust law and that ought to be abolished. If this is what his warrant was for, if this is true, this is the man that you are outraged about. When he tried to flee Barack Obama, when he tried to flee from justice, when he tried to flee from the governing authority instituted by God. Right? Let's take a look at this story. This is an editorial written by Matt Walsh where he talks about Brittany Hill. I don't think you guys should watch the video of Brittany Hill, but if you feel compelled to see terrible violence perpetrated on an innocent woman by murderers, then I can't stop you. But his point in this article is, where were they when this woman died? Where was all this outrage? It seems like they're picking and choosing what they're going to be outraged about. I'm guessing that was an accident, just saying. Most likely, Lady Vixen did that on accident. So I'm guessing she accidentally hit the button, and I've done that before. I timed somebody out in, I think, Gary Shipman's stream one time as a mod. So it happens. I'm sorry that it happened. P-Money says, people are literally saying resisting arrest is not a big deal. When arrested, do exactly what the cops say. If you feel you're being wrongfully arrested, that's what appeals in court are for. Exactly. There is a system by which you can appeal the crime. There's checks and balances. If the cop is in violation of someone's rights in an arrest, if he or she violates their rights in that arrest, they will get sued. The departments will get sued, and they settle. And the person makes money off it. Was an injustice done on them? Yes, but some restitution will likely be made. My advice to people, in the vast majority of instances, is to peacefully submit and live to fight another day in court. I think I woke up the baby with my shouting, and so she's probably dealing with the baby and moving her phone and all that stuff. So it's my fault. Don't blame Lady Vixen. I was like, what did you say and say? I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. I have no education in the law, the criminal law of Minnesota. And I gave it a thorough, but I don't know. I think I give it a thorough enough reading, some relevant laws, some relevant statute regarding circumstances surrounding this shooting that I have an understanding of it. I believe that the provisions of the statute of Minnesota authorize this woman to use deadly force to stop this person. I think that in as fair a trial as can be conducted, any charge that's brought against her would find her to be not guilty of them based on the provisions of that statute. Again, I'm not a lawyer. But there are people calling her a murderer, calling for her to, I mean, who knows? I mean, I'm sure people have said some truly vile things about this woman on the internet, or in real life. Things that they would do or claim that they would do. And it's truly reprehensible. Truly reprehensible. Let's see how many subs I've lost for this. I'm interested to see how many subs I have lost during this stream. I always purge a couple when I talk about something as charged as this. Was it 255 earlier? What's happened? 256, I gained a sub. How does that happen? That's the place that society is in today. I don't want to leave people without hope, though. I believe that the system of government that we have provides a way for true justice to win out. I believe that the system of government that we have in the United States provides a way for true justice to be done. If you feel a law, you think a law is unjust, there is a system by which you can advocate for that law to be done away with. That you have a say in how you're governed is something that the majority of people in the history of the world cannot say. That is not something to be taken lightly. And the people that are attacking these institutions, they do not recognize that. They think there's some alternative way, some magical way by which they can save the day, and there isn't. If you truly feel there's an injustice, you don't solve that injustice by destroying the foundations of society, by stealing and destroying people's property, violating their rights, their autonomy, because you believe somebody else was unjustly killed. I disagree with your entire premise. But I will grant you, if you think that something was done unjustly, you can advocate for change, but not through violent means. You have representation. That is something that the majority of people in the history of the world cannot say. They cannot say that. The people who are the elected officials in these areas are predominantly the people who are advocating for the very laws that put you in these positions. What do? I mean, stop voting for these people? P Money says, if they want to reform police, I'm open to it. If they can explain an idea that makes sense to make it happen. But no, it's burn it all down. I agree. I think that there are reforms that could be brought to law enforcement. I think that the amount of time spent on training annually for law enforcement is abysmal. I think the state of training for law enforcement is absolutely abysmal. It is so poor, but it's based on the fact that there are not enough cops to fill in the gap for training. These streets will be left empty if people go to train on a regular basis. The way to reform police, I believe, is to provide more funding and to hire more cops so that there can be regular training on a wide variety of topics. Why are other government institutions, why are the, like in the military, for instance, like the Navy SEALs, why are they so elite? Because of the training that they do. They get enough training with repetition over and over and over again that they can carry out their missions to a very precise degree. And cops get annual training that is usually around a week, maybe 2, maybe just a few days in some places. None. But when Navy SEALs are not carrying out a mission, they are training every single day that they are working. I thought I was done too, Roger, but I got a second wind. There are legitimate ways that law enforcement could be reformed. I think that is the biggest way. That's my opinion. I don't think it's with Rashida Tlaib's, again, Congresswoman from Michigan, Rashida Tlaib. I don't think it's in her method of abolishing the police and incarceration. I was gonna say in toto, but abolishing the police and incarceration. That's what she's advocating for. I don't think that's the reform that's necessary. What more can you say about these things? Daily Mail from the UK reports Dante Wright, this is an article by Martin Gould, published today. Dante Wright choked a woman and threatened to shoot her if she did not hand over $820 she had stuffed in her bra. Court papers obtained by DailyMail.com allege. That is the case that led to a warrant for his arrest at the time he was shot and killed by police officer blank blank in Minnesota. I'm not going to read her name. Minnesota on Sunday, leading to days of unrest. You can look it up yourself if you want to know. An online speculation that he did not know there was a warrant out for his arrest is false, DailyMail.com has learned. A letter returned to the court for having a wrong address was giving notice of a court date in August and had nothing to do with the warrant. They told him. Regardless if he knew he had a warrant, he was being arrested. Wright, 20, was shot dead in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota on Sunday by a 26-year veteran in the Brooklyn Center Police Department. She says she mistakenly grabbed her gun instead of her taser. After the gun fired, she is heard on body camera saying, "Holy shit, I shot him." Potter, and so that's the woman, said her name, and Brooklyn Center Police Chief Tim Gannon both resigned on Tuesday. Basically, my guess is she immediately retired, having probably had enough time serving to to retire. Wright was allegedly pulled over for having expired license plate tags, although he called his mother and told her it was for having an air freshener hanging on his rearview mirror. Most likely, I would guess, because they have body cameras, there's a policy to start the body camera when you initiate a traffic stop. So they'll hit their body camera, which is on their chest, and they'll start that. Also, something to note is that they will most likely have a policy where they inform dispatch of what they're doing. They'll call the dispatch and they'll on radio and they'll say, I'm pulling somebody over for this, and it will be timed there. And what they're most likely, I would imagine, the reason that they're pulling somebody over. They'll also have body camera of going up to the window, telling the person, hey, I pulled you over for this reason, and asking for identification. And then once they get that identification, then they find out about the warrant. So all that information will come out. When they tried to handcuff him, Wright got back into his car, and at that point, officers shot him in the chest after warning fellow officers to get out of the way by shouting, taser, taser, taser. Wright was due to face trial on a charge of attempted aggravated robbery with a possible maximum sentence of 20 years in prison. Did a person who committed aggravated robbery, the firearm, threatening a woman over $820, did that person deserve to be charged with a crime? I'm not talking about what happened to him on the call, on that day when he died. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying, did that person deserve to be charged with a crime? That's the question I would have for Rashida Tlaib. Ought a person, regardless of skin color, national origin, creed, color, religion, did that person deserve to be charged with a crime? If there is evidence that this happened, did that person deserve to be charged with that crime? And justice to be carried out in that woman's name who was threatened? It's a pretty easy concept to come to. What's the alternative? What's the alternative to enforcing laws? How do you compel someone to come before the court for a court case without officers to arrest them, without agents to arrest them? Is it up to the individual to carry out their own arrest? The injured party to carry out the arrest? That's seemingly what they're advocating for, or I have no other possibility, no possible idea. If a social worker comes to my house and says, you've been charged with a crime, you need to go to the court, what compels me to do that? What compels me to do that? Without a threat of force. Why should I go? Why should I face justice if nothing is going to happen to force me to do it? It's all in the honor system. Will you please go? I'll be back. Short break and possibly the end, but I'll come back and say goodbye. See how soon I came back. See how soon I came back. Again, just saying, if you're watching, sorry you got timed out. It was an accident. I don't know what what else to say. I planned on doing a video about some of this stuff before, and I may do so in the future, talking about ideas of civics, how government works. But to be honest, I mean, it's pretty depressing. Just the state of what the media is doing to our society and what politicians like Rashida Tlaib are doing. Making enemies of the institutions that uphold society, the foundations of society. The point of this country, the way that it is laid out, is done in such a way as to give local jurisdictions as much power as possible, and to prevent there being a centralized government elsewhere that is oppressing you. Because of that, there are states that will not allow for these institutions to be done away with. There are people that will not allow that. And the last time that the federal government, the centralized government located in Washington, D.C., exerted control over an issue like this, it led to a civil war. And you say, well, how can you compare the two? One of them was about slavery, and that was morally wrong. Absolutely. Absolutely. American chattel slavery was morally wrong. I have no caveats, no qualms, nothing. Morally evil. But the issue at hand was whether or not the federal government had the right to define those things. And we saw the result of that. Ron Paul, I saw an interview with Ron Paul where he was once asked about the fact that he didn't think the Civil War ought to have been fought. And his answer was, every other civilized nation in the world, every other Western country, ended slavery without a bloody civil war that killed as many people as every other American war combined. Did the Civil War have good ramifications? Yes. But imagine the terror of living in that time of a civil war. And then ask yourself, if people advocate for the abolishment of police and the country descends into anarchy in these areas, what's the possible ramifications of that? I'm not advocating for violence. I'm advocating for the opposite. I'm advocating for peace. But the ramifications of what will happen, who can say? History has shown us that people are willing to do evil acts with just a small amount of provocation, whether it's Nazi Germany, whether it's Soviet Russia, whether it's the communist China, Chinese Communist Party, whether it's North Korea, whether it's lynchings in the American South. These evil acts need very little provocation to get people to commit them. People are evil. And the thing that keeps them in check is the authority given to governments by God to wield the sword of justice. That's what Romans 13 says. If that is done away with, the ramifications of it would be so large and so catastrophic that I don't see. I mean, it would be such a terrible time to live. That being said, because of the system of government that was put in place by the founding fathers in this country, by the people who designed this government, there are checks and balances to prevent that type of anarchy from occurring everywhere at once. It is incredibly hard to effect substantive change on that massive a scale in this country. So there is hope that justice will be done and that these evil actors, these evil people who are advocating for the destruction of society and evil things to happen to people, ultimately, by their actions, regardless of their intentions, they're advocating for evil. It might mean that you have to move from where you live. It may mean that you flee to a place that is sane, that has some degree of sanity and safety. But there is hope to believe that a system with the checks and balances that this country have will prevent anarchy from happening on a mass scale. But it requires good people to not stand by and let evil happen. Welcome, Grandma Deb. We're having a serious discussion about the foundations of society being attacked by sitting Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib when she advocates for no policing and no incarceration. What is it Edmund Burke said? The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. It is a moral evil to stand by and let evil triumph. Hello, Matthew. Welcome. Again, it is a moral evil to stand by as evil reigns. It was morally evil for the population of Germany in the early 20th century to stand by as their fellow citizens were rounded up and placed into concentration camps. It was a moral evil for those people to carry out the heinous crimes against these people, just as it was in China and just as it was all over the world when true oppression happens. But the reality is that just as evil as that was, Rashida Tlaib is advocating for a position that will endanger the lives of Americans, and predominantly the very Americans that she is claiming to support with these measures. The people who will be disadvantaged by there being no police, right? Because that's what she is advocating for. She says no policing, no incarceration. The people who will be disadvantaged by that are the people in high crime areas who are predominantly the people that she is claiming to support. That's the insanity of this. The people who are in these areas who are not participating in crime, but are disproportionately affected by it, will be the people who have the most evil done to them. Lady Vixen asks, if there were no incarcerations, I'd like to know what she thinks should happen to murderers. Are they just supposed to walk around free? I don't know. From what I find, she doesn't have any proposed solution to the quote unquote policing problem. And what she is advocating for immediate abolition. She is not advocating for the system to be reformed. She says no reform is possible. It must, therefore, the implication of her words is that the system must be abolished completely. With no apparent solution. So what would happen to murderers without incarcerations? Without policing? Nothing. Lynchings, mob justice, vigilantism? I don't know. What does she think is going to happen if there are no police to make arrests? If tomorrow all the police are abolished, there are no police, what does she think will happen? Who will go to make arrests? If a place is robbed, who will do the investigations? It's insanity. Absolute insanity. Anyways, I think that's a good place to stop. Not really. But remember what I said. The system of government that we have is not fundamentally flawed. No matter how many times these people claim it is one that is built in such a way to give people the most freedom possible. I don't know of a system of government that is more equitable and fair than the one that we have, and prevents tyranny and prevents the rule of the majority against the rule of that prevents oppression against minorities by the majority. I don't know of any system of government that does it better than ours. And the system of checks and balances is such that it prevents people from making sweeping change and from being tyrannical. As much as they want to say Trump was a tyrant, he was kept in check by there being other branches of government. He only had so much power. As much as they want to say that these people are evil tyrants and how terrible and conservatives and Republicans are evil, they have limited powers. Rashida Tlaib has limited power to affect change. But her advocacy for anarchy is serious. It is very serious. But there is hope. And that's what I think you ought to leave today thinking about, is that there is hope. Now, this was a deep conversation, and that's why it was on FlyFoxPro, the FlyFoxPro channel. I see this channel as a place to talk about these deeper things, and the Upon the Chaos channel, while talking about some deep things, is meant to be a place where it is at least shorter. So if you've not subscribed to Upon the Chaos and you want to have a shorter version of me talking about things like this, that's where you should go. Over here we have the deep conversations. Over there is shorter and more political. Well, this is, I think, not that these things aren't truly separated, but the people that might watch those videos may not want to see these. But some of them will come from there over here, and vice versa. So that's why they're separated. I think it works better that way. Again, that new channel is in the description. Upon the Chaos. It's in the description. If you haven't, I would please ask that you do subscribe there and you watch some of those videos, maybe leave a like and a comment. That will help it get seen by people. get out there. Just the interaction that you guys do is huge. Thank you for sticking with me as we talk about all of this stuff here. And there's lighter stuff coming. I did work on some reviews today that will be about pop culture type things, about culture that not necessarily touching on politics, but more on the philosophy of art and things like that. Now, I say that and you think, oh, it's going to be some ridiculously intellectual thing. No, there's going to be silliness and stuff. It's just going to deal with pop culture and art. So not everything is going to be so serious. If you want to support me with the videos that I'm making, there is a Patreon link in the description of this video that you can follow and pledge to support the work that I am doing. It's not just this channel, but the work of multiple channels now that I'm doing. You can pledge to support that on a monthly basis. If you don't feel that is the way that you can support this, but you want to make some sort of contribution monetarily, please do contact me on Twitter. The link is in the description on that. It's in the description. And, send me a private message or something, and maybe we can figure out another way to do it. If you don't feel that you can contribute or you don't want to, that's fine too. Enjoy the free content. I put it out for you guys. Thank you very much. Adios. Why aren't you leaving? I said adios.